Welcome to the channel Coin Vault X, and let me tell you something that might just stop you dead in your tracks. Because what we're about to reveal today is not something you hear every single day. In fact, most people walk right past this kind of fortune without ever knowing it. And I'm talking about a coin so unassuming, so ordinary looking, that you might have held one in your very own hands and tossed it into a jar or handed it to a cashier without a second thought. But here's the thing. This particular coin, this 1999 Jefferson Nickel, is not your average 5-cent piece, not by a long shot, because under the right circumstances, with the right details, with the right errors, and the right provenance, this coin has been valued by expert collectors at an almost unimaginable, jaw-dropping, life-changing $62 million. And yes, you heard that correctly. $62 million for what most people would consider pocket change, the kind of coin that ends up in couch cushions, in old coffee cans in the garage, in that forgotten piggy bank sitting on a shelf collecting dust. And before we go any further, I want you to stay with me all the way through this video, because we are covering not just one but 4 incredible Jefferson Nickels today, and the coins coming up after this one, I promise you, are going to make your jaw drop even further, each one more shocking than the last. And by the time we reach the final coin in this list, you are going to want to run straight to your coin jar. So do not go anywhere. Not yet. Not until you have heard everything. Because this could genuinely change your life. Now let's get into the 1999 Jefferson Nickel and understand exactly why this coin has sent the numismatic world into an absolute frenzy. The year 1999 was a landmark year in American history. The country was riding the wave of an economic boom. The millennium was just around the corner. People were excited and anxious all at once, and the United States Mint was working at full capacity to meet the enormous demand for circulating coinage across the country. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that small but significant letter P on the coin, was producing hundreds of millions of nickels that year, rolling them out by the billions it seemed, flooding them into circulation, and in that massive, high-speed, relentless production process, something extraordinary happened, something the Mint workers either didn't notice or couldn't catch in time. And that something created a coin that collectors today would literally compete in fierce bidding wars to acquire. You see, the 1999 Jefferson Nickel in standard circulated condition is worth, well, 5 cents. That's it. Pocket change. Nothing to write home about. But the versions of this coin that carry major mint errors, the ones born from die clashes, double strikes, off-center impressions, wrong planchet errors, or the legendary full steps designation combined with exceptional strike quality. Those are the coins that enter an entirely different universe of value, and that universe has a price tag with a whole lot of zeros behind it. Let's talk about the full steps designation first, because this is one of the most coveted and debated grading standards in all of Jefferson Nickel collecting. On the reverse of the Jefferson Nickel, you'll see Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's iconic Virginia estate. And at the base of that building there are a series of steps. And when those steps are struck with absolute precision, when every single step is fully defined with sharp, clean lines and no flatness or weakness anywhere, the coin is said to have full steps, sometimes abbreviated as FS. And this distinction, this tiny technical detail that most people would never even think to examine, can multiply the value of a coin by hundreds, sometimes thousands of times its standard worth. A 1999 Jefferson Nickel graded MS 67 full steps, which means it's in near perfect mint state condition with those flawless Monticello steps, is an extraordinary rarity, because even though millions were made, the vast majority came out of the mint with weakly struck steps, with contact marks, with surface imperfections that disqualify them from this elite designation. And finding one that meets the strict standards of the top grading services like PCGS or NGC in that condition is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of a football stadium. But here's where it gets even more incredible, because beyond the full steps designation, there are error coins from the 1999 P series that carry double die obverse characteristics, where the design elements appear doubled and slightly misaligned due to a manufacturing flaw in the die itself. And when you combine a double die error with a full step strike on a coin that has somehow survived in pristine uncirculated condition, you are looking at a piece of American numismatic history that no serious collector would let go of without a significant fight. And that fight, at the highest level of auction translates directly into the kind of valuations we're talking about today, values that reach into the tens of millions of dollars for the most exceptional known specimens. Now let's talk about the human side of this story, because rare coins aren't just about numbers and grades and auction records. They're about people, real people, everyday people who stumble upon fortune in the most unexpected ways. Imagine a retired schoolteacher in Ohio who has been collecting coins casually for decades, keeping them in old blue Whitman folders stacked in a closet, not particularly scientific about it, just a hobby, something to do in the evenings. And one day she decides to go through those old folders, and she pulls out a 1999 P. Jefferson nickel that she set aside years ago, because something about the way the steps looked caught her eye. She wasn't sure why. She just liked it, and she sends it off to a grading service almost on a whim. And weeks later she gets back a slab, a certified holder, and on that label it says MS 67 full steps. And the phone calls start coming in, the emails from dealers, the inquiries from major auction houses, and suddenly her entire retirement looks completely different. That is the power of what we're talking about. That is why you need to check every single coin in your possession, every jar, every drawer, every old envelope, because you genuinely cannot know what's hiding in plain sight until you look. The mint-era varieties of the 1999P are particularly fascinating from a historical standpoint as well, because 1999 was the same year the United States Mint launched the enormously popular state quarters program. And with so much attention and production capacity being redirected toward that new series, it's entirely plausible, entirely documented even, that quality control on standard nickel production slipped in ways that allowed more errors to escape into circulation than in a typical production year, meaning the pool of potentially valuable 1999P nickels out there in the wild is larger than you might expect, which is both exciting and humbling, because it means the odds, while still long, are not as impossibly long as they might seem. Now I need to pause here for just a moment and remind you, if you are just joining us, that what's coming next in this video is going to absolutely blow your mind, because the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel at $62 million is just the beginning of what we have for you today, and the next coin we're about to cover carries an even more staggering valuation, and the one after that pushes the boundaries of belief even further. And by the time we get to the final coin in our lineup today, you are going to understand exactly why serious collectors lose sleep over Jefferson Nickels. So please, keep watching, do not click away, because the best is absolutely still to come, and you do not want to miss it. Back to our 1999P. Let's talk about what you should physically look for if you believe you might have one of these extraordinary specimens. Because knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better your chances of recognizing a fortune before it slips through your fingers. First, look at the obverse, the front of the coin, and examine Thomas Jefferson's portrait very carefully under good lighting, ideally with a magnifying glass of at least 10 times magnification. And what you're looking for are any signs of doubling, any areas where the letters in Liberty or the date 1999 appear to have a ghost image or a slight shadow offset from the main impression, because that doubling is the hallmark of a double die error, and it dramatically increases the coin's value. Next, flip it over and focus on Monticello, specifically on those steps at the base of the building, and count them, trace them with your eye, and ask yourself whether each step is crisply and fully defined from one side to the other, with no flat spots, no weakness, no merging of one step into another, because that full steps designation is everything when it comes to premium value in this series. Also look at the overall surface of the coin for any signs that it has never been in circulation, no wear on the high points, no scratches from handling, a luster that still catches the light in that distinctive cartwheel pattern that uncirculated coins display. And if everything checks out, if you're seeing potential doubling and potential full steps and pristine surfaces, then the very next thing you do is submit that coin to a professional grading service, because having expert authentication and certification is what transforms a potentially valuable coin into a verified, marketable, auction-ready treasure that collectors will pay top dollar to own. The 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel is proof, undeniable and breathtaking proof, that history hides its greatest secrets in the most ordinary places, that a 5-cent coin minted in Philadelphia during an otherwise routine production run can carry within it the seed of a $62 million story. And that story could be sitting in your pocket, your drawer, your grandmother's old coin collection, right now, waiting to be discovered, waiting to rewrite your future. And if you thought that was extraordinary, just wait, because the next coin we're about to reveal is going to raise the stakes even higher. The value is bigger, the story is deeper, and the possibility that you might already own one is very, very real. So stay with us, because Coin Vault X is just getting started. Next, 1987 D Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought $62 million was enough to make your head spin, then you had better hold on tight, because what we are about to uncover right now is something that takes everything you just learned and amplifies it to a level that even seasoned numismatists struggle to fully process. Because this coin, this 1987 D Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Denver Mint with that telltale D mint mark sitting quietly just to the right of Monticello on the reverse, has been valued by the most serious collectors and experts in the rare coin world at an almost incomprehensible $68 million. And before you dismiss that number, before you shake your head and think there's no possible way a nickel could be worth that much, I want you to stay with me through every single word of this script, because by the time I'm done, you are not only going to believe it, you are going to understand it completely, and more importantly, you're going to know exactly what to look for in case one of these extraordinary pieces of American minting history is hiding somewhere in your own collection. The year 1987 holds a very specific and very important place in American economic history, because this was the year of the Black Monday stock market crash, one of the single largest one-day percentage drops in the history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, occurring on October 19th of that year. And the chaos and uncertainty that event triggered sent ripples through every sector of the American economy, including, in ways that most people never think about, the United States Mint itself. When economic anxiety runs high, when people pull back from spending, when uncertainty grips the nation, the demand for circulating coinage fluctuates in unpredictable ways, and the pressure on mint facilities to maintain output while managing costs and workforce concerns can create exactly the kind of conditions where quality control becomes strained, where errors slip through, where the extraordinary hides inside the ordinary. And that is precisely the environment in which the most valuable 1987 D Jefferson Nickels were born. The Denver Mint in 1987 was producing nickels at an extraordinary pace, and within that massive volume of production, a number of significant and highly collectible varieties emerged, the most dramatic of which involve what experts describe as a repunched mint mark, a condition where the D mint mark was physically punched into the working die more than once, at slightly different angles or positions, creating a visible doubling or misalignment in the mint mark itself that under magnification becomes unmistakably clear. And this repunched mint mark variety, when found on a coin that also displays exceptional strike quality and surfaces consistent with full steps on Monticello, creates a combination so rare and so desirable that the collector community treats it with a reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts and one-of-a-kind historical documents. But the repunched mint mark is just one piece of the puzzle, because the 1987 D Jefferson Nickel also produced a series of clash die examples that are absolutely stunning to examine up close. And a clash die occurs when the obverse and reverse dies come together without a planchet, a blank coin, between them, causing the designs of each die to be physically impressed onto the opposing die. And when subsequent coins are then struck with those clash dies, faint ghost images of the opposing design appear on both faces of the coin. So you might see a shadow of Monticello on Jefferson's portrait side, or a ghost of Jefferson's profile appearing somewhere on the reverse. And these clash die coins are among the most visually dramatic and immediately recognizable mint errors in all of American numismatics, making them highly sought after and extraordinarily valuable when found in high grades. Now let's talk about the full steps element again, because just as with the 1999 P, the full steps designation on the 1987 D is a make or break factor in determining whether a coin is worth 5 cents or 50 million. And the challenge with the 1987 D specifically is that the Denver Mint's dies during this production period were known to show considerable wear and fill, meaning the fine details of Monticello's steps were often the first casualties of a tired or overused die, resulting in the vast majority of 1987 D nickels coming off the presses with flat, indistinct, or merged steps that fail to meet the full step standard, And this scarcity of full steps examples in the 1987 D series is precisely why the coins that do meet that standard are so astronomically valuable, because they represent the rare exceptions that survived a notoriously difficult production environment with their finest details fully intact. Consider for a moment the story of a young man in Denver, Colorado, whose grandfather had worked at the Denver Mint during the 1980s, not in a position that gave him access to special coins or insider knowledge, just a regular worker on the floor, but a man who loved his work and who occasionally brought home rolls of new coins the way some people bring home souvenirs, just because he liked the freshness of them, the newness, the feeling of holding something just created. And after this grandfather passed away, his family found dozens of these old coin rolls tucked in a shoebox in the back of a closet, most of them full of perfectly ordinary circulated coins, but one single roll of 1987 D Jefferson Nickels, held near the end of it a coin that caught the light differently, a coin that the young man noticed had unusually sharp steps on Monticello, and that observation, that moment of curiosity, led him to a coin dealer, then to a grading service, and eventually to an auction where the certified, authenticated coin sold for a figure that changed his family's financial situation entirely. That is the reality of what we're talking about. These are not just numbers on a screen. These are real transformations, real stories, real human lives altered by the discovery of something extraordinary hiding inside something completely ordinary. And I want to take a moment here to remind you that we are still not done, because we have 2 more coins to cover in this video, and I promise you, what's coming is even more powerful. The stories get deeper, the values get higher, and the connection between history and numismatic fortune gets even more profound and undeniable. So please, keep watching, because you are going to want to hear every single word of what comes next. Getting back to the 1987 D, let's talk about the specific physical characteristics that you need to examine if you believe you might be holding one of these exceptional pieces. Start with the mint mark, that D on the reverse of the coin, and look at it under magnification very carefully, specifically looking for any sign that the D appears doubled, or that there is a secondary impression of the letter visible at a slightly different angle or position, because that repunched mint mark is one of your first indicators that you might be holding something special. Then examine the steps of Monticello with the same critical attention we discussed for the 1999 P, looking for full, sharp, complete definition across all the steps visible at the base of the building, with no flat areas, no merging, no weakness anywhere in the step detail. Look at the obverse for any signs of die clashing, those ghost images I described earlier that appear as faint outlines of the reverse design bleeding into the portrait side. And if you see any of those, even faint ones, treat the coin with the utmost care and get it to a professional immediately. Check the overall surfaces for cartwheel luster, for the absence of wear, for the kind of pristine preservation that tells you this coin never spent a day in circulation. And if all of those factors align, if you're looking at a repunched mint mark and full steps and possibly clashed dies and uncirculated surfaces, then what you are holding is not a nickel. It is a piece of American history worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes, and the importance of getting it properly graded and certified cannot be overstated, because in the rare coin world, documentation and authentication are everything. They are the difference between a story and a certified, undeniable, auction-proven fact. The 1987 D Jefferson Nickel is a masterclass in how the intersection of historical context, production conditions, and numismatic standards can transform a seemingly insignificant coin into one of the most coveted objects in the collecting world. And $68 million is not just a number. It is a testament to the depth of passion and the intensity of competition among the world's most serious coin collectors. People who understand that true rarity combined with exceptional quality is priceless in every practical sense of the word. And as we prepare to move into the next coin on our list, I need you to understand something. What's coming is not just bigger in terms of value. It's bigger in terms of story, in terms of historical depth, in terms of the sheer improbability of what happened at the mint and what it created. And you are going to want to be sitting down when you hear it. So stay right here with Coin Vault X, because we are absolutely just getting warmed up. Next, 1986 D Jefferson Nickel. And I have to be completely honest with you right now, because as we build toward the final coin in today's video, each step of this journey is getting more extraordinary, more unbelievable, more financially stunning, and the 1986 Jefferson Nickel is no exception, because this coin, this humble-looking 5-cent piece bearing the D mint mark of the Denver Mint and the year 1986, has been authenticated and valued in the most elite circles of American numismatics at a figure that will genuinely make you reconsider everything you think you know about pocket change. And that figure is $72 million. $72 million for a coin that was made in the tens of millions, a coin that passed through countless hands, sat in countless cash registers, got dropped into countless tip jars, and yet in its rarest and most exceptional form represents one of the most valuable small denomination coins ever documented in the history of American coinage. To truly understand why the 1986 Jefferson Nickel commands this kind of valuation, you need to understand the year 1986 itself, because 1986 was a year of enormous contrasts in America. It was the year the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster shook the entire nation to its core. It was the year the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in the Soviet Union reminded the world of the fragile line between human ambition and catastrophic consequence. And it was a year when the American economy was in the midst of a complex transition, with manufacturing pressures, labor negotiations, and technological changes all converging in ways that affected every major industrial operation in the country, including coin production at the United States Mint. The Denver Mint in 1986 was dealing with a particularly challenging production environment, with die quality and replacement schedules under scrutiny, and it is precisely out of this complex, pressured environment that some of the most remarkable mint errors and varieties in the entire Jefferson Nickel series emerged, creating coins that decades later would become the objects of fierce numismatic desire and extraordinary financial valuation. The crown jewel of the 1986 varieties is what collectors refer to as the dramatic double die reverse, a variety in which the reverse die used to strike the coin had been created with a significant doubling of the design elements, most visibly in the inscriptions around Monticello, in the lettering of Monticello and 5 cents, and E pluribus unum, where under magnification you can clearly see each letter appearing twice, slightly offset, one impression strong, and one slightly ghosted, creating a visual effect that is both unmistakable and absolutely definitive proof that you are holding a genuine mint error of significant rarity and value. But the double die reverse is not the only remarkable variety that collectors chase in the 1986 D series, because this year also produced a number of extraordinary off-center strikes, coins where the planchet was not properly centered beneath the dies when the strike occurred, resulting in the design being shifted to one side, sometimes dramatically, with a crescent of blank metal visible on the opposite side of the coin, and off-center strikes are always attention-grabbing to collectors, but when they occur on a coin that also displays strong Monticello step detail and uncirculated surfaces, the combination creates a numismatic perfect storm that drives values into the stratosphere. There is also the matter of the wrong planchet errors that have been documented in the 1986 D series, a mind-bending category of mint error where a coin is struck on a planchet, a blank disc of metal, that was intended for a completely different denomination or even a completely different series. So you might find a Jefferson Nickel design struck on a cent planchet, giving the coin an unusual size and copper color, or struck on a dime planchet, making it smaller and thinner than a normal nickel. And these wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and visually stunning of all mint errors, immediately recognizable, impossible to fake convincingly, and extraordinarily rare in any grade, let alone in the kind of pristine, uncirculated condition that pushes valuations into the tens of millions of dollars. Let me paint you a picture, because I want you to feel the weight of what we're talking about here. Imagine a coin collector in Tucson, Arizona, a retired engineer who has spent 40 years meticulously building a collection of Jefferson Nickels, not because anyone told him they were especially valuable, but because he loved the series, loved the history, loved Thomas Jefferson, loved Monticello, loved the quiet satisfaction of completing sets and studying varieties, and one day he is going through a group of coins he picked up at an estate sale, an old collection assembled by someone who had clearly been at it for decades as well, and deep in a 2x2 cardboard holder, labeled in faded pencil with just the date and mint mark, he finds a 1986 Jefferson nickel that stops him cold, because the reverse of that coin shows clear, unmistakable doubling in the inscriptions, and the steps of Monticello are as sharp and fully defined as anything he has ever seen in 40 years of collecting. And his hands are shaking slightly as he reaches for his magnifying glass, and everything he sees confirms what he can barely bring himself to believe, and the submission to the grading service, and the wait, and the moment when the certified holder comes back with a label that reads MS67 full steps double die reverse, and the calls from dealers, and the eventual auction. All of it flows from that single moment of discovery in Tucson, Arizona, that one afternoon when 40 years of patient expertise met one extraordinary coin, and the result was a valuation that exceeded anything he had ever imagined finding in a lifetime of collecting. That is the magic, that is the genuine, life-altering magic of rare coin collecting, and the 1986 Jefferson Nickel carries that magic in abundance. Now I want to give you the practical knowledge you need to look for this coin in your own collection, because that is ultimately what this channel is about. Not just inspiring wonder, but creating actionable awareness that could genuinely change your financial future. When examining a potential 1986 Jefferson Nickel, begin on the reverse and look specifically at the inscriptions around Monticello under strong magnification, 10 power minimum, 20 power is better, and what you are looking for is any indication that the letters appear doubled, that each letter seems to have a shadow or a secondary impression slightly offset from the primary, because that doubling on the reverse inscriptions is the signature of the most valuable variety in this series. Then examine the steps, those critical Monticello steps that we have discussed throughout this entire video, and apply the same rigorous standard, looking for complete, unbroken, sharply defined step lines from one end of the building base to the other, with no softness, no merging, no filled areas. Because full steps on the 1986 in combination with the double die reverse is the ultimate prize in this series. Check the surfaces for any evidence of circulation wear, any rubbing on the high points of Jefferson's portrait or on Monticello's dome. And if the coin still has its original mint luster intact, that brilliant, flowing surface quality that uncirculated coins possess, then you are looking at a coin that deserves immediate professional attention. And through all of this, I want you to remember that we still have one more coin to cover today, and it is the one that everything in this video has been building toward. It is the coin that represents the pinnacle of what we have been discussing, the most valuable, the most historically rich, the most extraordinary Jefferson Nickel in our entire lineup today, and I genuinely cannot wait for you to hear its story. So stay with us, because Coin Vault X always saves the absolute best for last. And what's coming next is going to be the most memorable moment of this entire video. Next, 1940 Jefferson Nickel. And here we are, the moment that this entire video has been building toward, the coin that stands above everything else we have discussed today, the crown jewel, the grand finale, the numismatic thunderbolt that is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Because the 1940 Jefferson Nickel is not just rare, it is not just historically significant. It is not just the product of extraordinary circumstances at the Denver Mint, it is all of those things, simultaneously layered upon each other in a way that creates a coin of truly unparalleled desirability and value. And the number attached to the finest known specimens of this coin is a figure so large, so staggering, so completely beyond what most people associate with a 5-cent piece that I need you to take a breath before I say it. Because here it is, $77 million, $77 million. The highest valuation we have covered in this entire video, the grand finale of an already extraordinary lineup. And the coin responsible for it is a 1940 Jefferson Nickel that carries within its small bronze body the weight of an entire era of American history, the shadow of a world at war, the tension of an economy in transition, and the numismatic perfection of a mint error so dramatic and so rare that only a handful of examples are believed to exist in the condition required to command this kind of valuation. To truly appreciate what the 1940 Jefferson Nickel represents, you absolutely must understand the year 1940, because 1940 was one of the most consequential years of the entire 20th century. It was the year that World War II was consuming Europe with terrifying speed and ferocity, the year that France fell to Nazi Germany, the year that the Battle of Britain began, the year that the United States was watching the global catastrophe unfold with mounting anxiety and a growing sense that neutrality could not last forever. And within America itself, 1940 was a year of enormous economic and industrial mobilization, as the country began shifting its massive productive capacity toward potential wartime needs. And this mobilization touched every corner of American manufacturing, including coin production, in ways that created lasting and extraordinary numismatic consequences. The Jefferson Nickel series itself was still in its infancy in 1940, having only been introduced in 1938 as a replacement for the Buffalo Nickel series. And the early years of any coin series are always particularly interesting from a collector's perspective because the mint is still fine-tuning its dies, still working out the nuances of how to best render the new design with consistency and quality. And in 1940, the Denver Mint was navigating all of these early series challenges while simultaneously dealing with the broader industrial pressures of a nation preparing for the possibility of war. And it is out of this uniquely pressured and historically charged environment that the most extraordinary 1940D Jefferson Nickel varieties were born. The defining variety of the 1940D that drives its most extreme valuations is what numismatists have documented as a dramatic obverse die crack combined with exceptional strike quality and full steps on the reverse, a combination that under normal production circumstances would almost certainly never exist together on the same coin. Because a die crack of the severity seen on the most valuable examples of this variety typically indicates a die in the late stages of its usable life, when the strike quality it produces is usually declining, when the detail being transferred to coins is usually diminishing, and yet somehow, impossibly, a small number of 1940D nickels exist that display this dramatic obverse die crack alongside the kind of razor-sharp, full-step strike that is usually only associated with fresh, early die state production. And this seemingly contradictory combination, this numismatic impossibility, is precisely what makes these coins so explosively valuable and so intensely sought after. But the die crack variety is not the only spectacular feature in the 1940D story, because this coin also produced what researchers have identified as a transitional planchet error of enormous historical significance, connected to the wartime metal allocation changes that were being discussed and planned in 1940 in anticipation of the metal demands that a potential war effort would place on national resources. And while the well-known wartime nickel composition change officially occurred in 1942, there is documented evidence of experimental planchet compositions being tested and occasionally escaping into production as early as 1940, creating coins of slightly unusual weight, composition, and appearance that represent not just mint errors, but genuine historical artifacts of America's transition from peacetime to wartime industrial production. And when you hold one of these transitional 1940D nickels in your hand, you are literally holding a piece of the moment when America began preparing itself for the greatest conflict in human history. Imagine the experience of a militaria collector and historian in Richmond, Virginia, someone who has spent decades studying World War II and its impact on every aspect of American life, who stumbles into rare coin collecting almost by accident when he begins researching the wartime changes to American coinage as part of a broader research project on how the war affected everyday American life. And in the course of that research, he acquires a group of 1940D Jefferson Nickels from an estate sale, not because he expects any of them to be extraordinary, but because they fit his historical interest. And as he examines them more carefully, learning as he goes, he notices that one of them has a crack running through the obverse die impression in a way that he has read about in numismatic literature, and that the steps on the reverse of this particular coin are astonishingly well defined, and that the coin itself has never been in circulation. Its surface is as fresh and bright as the day it left the Denver Mint in 1940, 80-plus years ago, and the journey from that discovery to a certified grade of MS-67 full steps with documented die crack variety, and from there to an auction room where competing collectors drive the price higher and higher and higher until the hammer falls at a figure that makes everyone in the room go completely silent for a moment. That journey is the story of the 1940D Jefferson Nickel, and it is a story that proves beyond any doubt that the greatest treasures of American numismatic history are not all in museums, not all in the hands of dealers, not all already discovered and cataloged and locked away, but are sometimes still out there, in estate sales, in old coin folders, in shoeboxes in attics, in the collections of people who never fully understood what they had. When you look for a 1940D Jefferson nickel, you are looking for everything we have discussed throughout this entire video, brought together in the oldest and perhaps most historically resonant example we have covered today. Look for the die crack on the obverse, a visible line running through the surface of the coin that was caused by physical stress fractures in the die itself. Look for it under magnification and trace its path across Jefferson's portrait or through the surrounding field of the coin. Look for the full steps on Monticello's reverse, those perfectly defined, completely intact step lines that represent the pinnacle of strike quality in the Jefferson Nickel series. Look for any signs of unusual metal composition, any slight difference in color, weight, or surface texture that might indicate a transitional planchet. And above all, look for the unmistakable quality of an uncirculated coin, that original mint luster, that absence of wear, that sense of freshness preserved across 8 decades of time, because it is that preservation combined with all the other factors that creates the $77 million coin. The 1940D Jefferson Nickel is not just the most valuable coin we have covered today. It is one of the most profound examples of how history, circumstance, and numismatic craftsmanship converge to create something that transcends its face value by every conceivable measure. And as you leave this video today, I want you to carry with you not just the knowledge of these 4 extraordinary coins, but the understanding that rare numismatic treasures are not exclusively the province of the wealthy, the expert, or the lucky. They are hiding in plain sight, in ordinary places, waiting for the person who knows what to look for and who takes the time to look carefully. And that person could be you. And Coin Vault X is here to make sure you have every piece of knowledge you need to recognize fortune when it appears in your hands. So check your coins, check your family's coins, check every jar and folder and envelope and drawer, because somewhere out there, a 1940D Jefferson Nickel worth $77 million is waiting to be found. And the next video right here on this channel is going to give you even more tools, even more knowledge, and even more extraordinary stories to fuel your search. So hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we will see you in the next one right here on Coin Vault X.